Welcome to Better Call Saul Season 1 Recap. Premise: 6 years before the events of Breaking Bad in 2002, Jimmy McGill, who will later become Saul Goodman, is a struggling lawyer in Albuquerque, New Mexico. Even though this series is a prequel, at the start of each season we also see snippets of his life after the events in Breaking Bad, in which he is working as a manager in a Cinnabon bakery using his latest alias, Takavic. Before we dive into the recap, I want to let you guys know that I have already recapped some series for you to watch, so if you like those, go check them out after this video. Alright, back to Better Call Saul. Jimmy plans to climb up in his career by convincing the Kettlemans, whom are suspects in an embezzlement case, to hire him as their lawyer. However, they view him as a lawyer who is hired by guilty people, so they hire HHM, the law firm of Jimmy's brother Chuck. Due to his electromagnetic hypersensitivity, Chuck is forced to stay in-house, with Jimmy caring for him. In an elaborate scheme to get the Kettlemans back, Jimmy and his accomplices accidentally involve Tuco Salamanca's grandmother. At her house, Jimmy and his co-conspirators are then taken by Tuco. An enraged Tuco ties up the three schemers and takes them to the desert to interrogate and eventually kill them. Afraid, Jimmy reveals his scheme for the Kettlemans and successfully convinces Tuco to only break one leg on each of the brothers instead of killing them. Hearing about the embezzlement case, Nacho plans to rob the Kettlemans and wants Jimmy to help him, but Jimmy declines, stating that he's not a criminal. Knowing of Nacho's plan, Jimmy warns the Kettlemans of the immediate danger. The following day, the police tell him that the Kettlemans are kidnapped. Nacho is then arrested when an observant neighbor had seen him the day before. He threatens Jimmy to get him out of jail or face the consequences. Meanwhile, Mike gives Jimmy a tip that the Kettlemans have run off and are not kidnapped. Following this lead, Jimmy finds the Kettlemans camping in the hills nearby, along with the $1.6 million embezzlement money. Having found the Kettlemans, they offer him a bribe, which he takes and uses to imitate Howard and HHM on a billboard. However, Howard legally orders it to be removed. During the removal, Jimmy stages a fake rescue of the billboard worker, which generates a lot of positive reviews for his law firm. Then during his usual trip to Chuck, he removes the local newspaper covering his rescue. However, Chuck notices and steals his neighbor's paper, seeing the article of Jimmy's heroic act. The neighbor reports Chuck's theft to the police, who invade his house and taser him, causing him to be hospitalized. At the hospital, the doctor tells Jimmy that Chuck's condition is psychological and not physical, wanting Chuck committed to a mental institution, but Jimmy refuses. After his heroic stunt, Jimmy gains new clients, one of which an elderly woman. Seeing his work with her, Kim advises Jimmy to specialize in elder law, and so he promotes himself at a nursing home, while Mike is visited by two police officers from his old precinct. Mike hires Jimmy as his lawyer and instructs him to spill coffee on the detective so he can steal his notebook. He learns that his daughter-in-law Stacy called the police after finding some money. In a confrontation, Mike reveals the truth about his son Matt to Matt's wife Stacy. He tells her how Matt refused to be a dirty cop in a precinct full of them, that got him killed by two of his fellow cops. It is then revealed in a flashback that Mike killed the killers of his son. At Chuck's, Jimmy leaves behind several boxes of legal documents, hoping that Chuck will slowly get back to his old self. After an unfavorable deal from HHM, which Kim worked hard for, the Kettlemans fire her and the firm. They then go back to Jimmy and force him to help them, or reveal the bribe he took. Together with Mike, Jimmy breaks into the Kettlemans' house and steals the money, giving it to the prosecutors, telling the Kettlemans to go back to HHM and Kim and take the initial deal. In a flashback, we see how Jimmy worked in the mailroom at HHM and got his law degree via distance learning. However, Howard tells him that they won't hire him. During one of his new cases, Jimmy discovers that Sandpiper Crossing, a nursing home, overcharges their residents. He gathers paper evidence and together with Chuck finds the smoking gun. Chuck then goes to Jimmy's car to get some documents, but is shocked when he realizes he went outside, unprotected from electricity. Jimmy and Chuck realize the Sandpiper case is too big, and Chuck convinces him to hand it over to HHM. However, HHM wants only the case and not Jimmy. Jimmy then discovers that Chuck had called Howard in advance and confronts him. Chuck reveals that it was he who blocked Jimmy on the Sandpiper case, and that he actually has never respected Jimmy as a lawyer due to his con man past and his cheap way of getting a law degree. Devastated, Jimmy hands the Sandpiper case over to HHM and stops caring for Chuck. Meanwhile, Mike takes on a side job as a bodyguard for Price, who sells stolen drugs to Nacho. Having a breakdown, Jamie goes back to his old friend, Marco, with whom he conned people in the past. They have a week of fun conning people, but Marco suddenly dies. Kim then calls Jimmy to inform that the Sandpiper case is so big that HHM is collaborating with Davis and Maine. And due to Jimmy's good contact with the elderly, they want to hire him. When driving out of the courthouse parking lot, he asks Mike why they didn't take the cattleman money, claiming that he will never make such a mistake again. Thank you all for watching and see you on the next recap.
You